This Stoic mindset will change the way you think. Stop underestimating yourself. Stoic philosophy and psychological mastery. There is a quiet tragedy happening in the world right now. Not the tragedy of failure. Not the tragedy of rejection. Not even the tragedy of hardship. The real tragedy is the number of people who walk through life believing they are smaller than they truly are. People who silence their voice. People who hide their intelligence. People who dim their light. People who shrink themselves just to make others comfortable. And the worst part, most of them never realize what they are doing. They underestimate themselves so deeply that they begin to believe the lie. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. But what most people never realize is this: your greatest enemy is not the world. Your greatest enemy is the voice in your own mind that whispers, maybe. You are not good enough. Maybe you are not ready. Maybe someone else is better." And slowly, quietly, without noticing, you begin to play small. But the Stoics understood something powerful. Something dangerous. Something most people never discover. The moment you stop underestimating yourself is the moment your life changes forever. Because the world does not reward potential. It rewards belief. Tonight, we are going to dismantle the illusion that has been limiting your power. We will explore the psychology of self-doubt, the hidden manipulation of society, the ancient Stoic mindset of inner dominance, and why the most dangerous thing you can ever do is finally realize who you truly are. So listen carefully. Because by the end of this video, you may never see yourself the same way again. The dangerous comfort of playing small. There is a strange comfort in playing small. A quiet safety that hides inside the background of life. When you underestimate yourself, something interesting happens. You avoid responsibility. You avoid expectations. You avoid the terrifying possibility of failure. And at first, it feels like protection. Because when people expect less from you, you cannot disappoint them. When you stay silent, no one can criticize your ideas. When you stay invisible, no one can attack your ambition. So the mind begins to believe something dangerous. Maybe it's safer to stay small. But what feels like protection is actually a prison. Because every time you choose safety over growth, you slowly train your mind to accept a smaller version of your life. And the tragedy is that most people never realize it. They wake up every day thinking they are being realistic. They say things like, "I'm just being humble. I don't want to stand out too much. I'm not that special." But humility and self-erasure are not the same thing. The Stoics understood this deeply. They believed humility meant understanding your place in the universe. But it never meant pretending you are less capable than you truly are. Marcus Aurelius did not rule the Roman Empire by hiding his abilities. He ruled it by accepting the responsibility of his potential. And that is the difference most people fail to understand. Great individuals do not believe they are better than everyone else. But they also refuse to pretend they are powerless. Because power begins with self-recognition. When you recognize your strength, you begin to act differently. You speak differently. You move differently. You think differently. But when you constantly underestimate yourself, you unconsciously sabotage your own future. You hesitate before opportunities. You question your own ideas. You assume someone else must be more qualified. And the opportunity quietly passes to someone else. Not because they were better, but because they believed they were capable. Confidence often beats competence. Not because confidence is magical, but because confidence creates action. And action creates results. Imagine two people standing at the same door of opportunity. One believes they are ready. The other believes they are not. Only one of them knocks. Only one of them steps forward. Only one of them changes their life. And the painful truth is this. The world rarely stops to convince you that you deserve more. If you wait for permission to believe in yourself, you may wait forever. Because society often rewards those who step forward first, not those who hesitate the longest. This is why playing small is so dangerous. It slowly removes you from the competition of life. You stop trying. You stop pushing. You stop believing something greater is possible for you. And before you know it, years have passed. Opportunities are gone. Dreams are forgotten. All because of one quiet assumption. I'm probably not capable enough. But here is something powerful to remember. Every extraordinary person in history was once underestimated. By others. And often, by themselves. Even the greatest Stoic thinkers struggled with doubt. Marcus Aurelius wrote his thoughts in private journals because he constantly reminded himself of discipline, courage, and strength. Not because he already felt perfect confidence, but because confidence must be practiced. It must be built. It must be reinforced. And this is where most people fail. They wait for confidence before they take action. But the Stoics understood the opposite truth. Confidence is created through action. Not before it. The warrior becomes confident by fighting battles. The speaker becomes confident by speaking. The leader becomes confident by leading. And the thinker becomes confident by thinking boldly. Waiting to feel ready is a trap. Because readiness rarely arrives before action. It arrives after. So if you feel like you have been underestimating yourself, you are not alone. Millions of people live inside this invisible cage. A cage built from hesitation. A cage built from comparison. A cage built from fear. But the bars of that cage are weaker than they appear. Because they exist mostly in your mind. And the moment you begin to challenge the story you tell yourself, the cage begins to crack. But there is something even more disturbing than self-doubt. Something deeper. Something society quietly reinforces every day. And once you see it, you will never look at the world the same way again. Because in the next part, we will uncover why the world sometimes benefits when you underestimate yourself. And the truth behind that idea may change the way you see confidence forever. How the world benefits when you doubt yourself. There is a truth about the world that most people discover very late in life. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. The truth is this: a person who doubts themselves is easier to control. Think about it. Someone who constantly questions their worth will hesitate to challenge authority. They will hesitate to speak up. They will hesitate to demand more from life. And because of that hesitation, they become predictable, quiet, manageable. Now this does not mean that the world is secretly plotting against you. But systems, schools, workplaces, even social circles, often reward people who follow expectations without resistance. When someone is confident and independent in their thinking, it disrupts the structure. It introduces unpredictability. And unpredictability makes many people uncomfortable. So instead, society often praises modesty to the point where it becomes self-suppression. You hear phrases like, "Don't get ahead of yourself. Be realistic. Stay in your lane." At first, these phrases sound harmless. Sometimes even wise. But when repeated enough, they begin to shape the boundaries of your ambition. Slowly, you stop imagining bigger possibilities. You begin to believe the limits placed in front of you are permanent. But the Stoics understood something very powerful about limits. Many of them are illusions. The philosopher Epictetus once said that people are disturbed not by events themselves, but by the judgments they make about those events. In other words, the barrier is not always the obstacle. The barrier is often the belief that the obstacle cannot be overcome. And once that belief enters your mind, you stop trying. That is the real power of self-doubt. It does not just weaken your confidence. It changes your behavior. A person who doubts themselves will avoid difficult opportunities. They will avoid leadership. They will avoid risk. But someone who believes in their capability, even if they are not perfect yet, will move forward anyway. History is filled with individuals who succeeded not because they were the most talented, but because they refused to believe they were incapable. Think about innovators. Think about explorers. Think about thinkers who changed entire civilizations. Many of them were told they were unrealistic. Many were told they were not qualified. Many were underestimated, yet they continued forward because they trusted their inner judgment more than the opinions around them. This is what makes belief so powerful. Belief changes action, and action changes destiny. But there is something even deeper happening beneath the surface. Self-doubt spreads socially, when one person begins to limit themselves. Others around them begin to do the same. Groups create invisible ceilings, unspoken limits, and over time, those limits begin to feel normal. Imagine a room full of people who believe they cannot succeed beyond a certain point. Even if the opportunity exists, most will never attempt it because they have internalized the idea that it is not meant for them. But occasionally, someone breaks the pattern. Someone steps forward. Someone decides the rules they accepted were never absolute. And when that happens, something remarkable occurs. Others begin to question their own limitations. That is why confidence is contagious. But so is doubt, which means every time you underestimate yourself, you are not only limiting your own life, you may also be reinforcing the limits of the people around you. And that realization changes everything. Because your courage does not just affect you. Your courage becomes permission for others. Your growth becomes proof that more is possible. And your belief becomes a signal that limitations can be challenged. But before that transformation can happen, there is something you must understand about the Stoic mindset. Something that separates those who remain trapped in doubt from those who develop inner authority. The Stoics did not wait for approval from the world. They did not wait for constant encouragement. They did not depend on validation to move forward. Instead, they built something far more powerful. A mind that was stable regardless of external opinion. A mind that was calm under pressure. A mind that understood its own strength. And once you develop that kind of mind, the opinions of others lose their power over you. Because the next part of this journey is where everything begins to change. We will explore the Stoic secret of inner authority, the mental discipline that allowed ancient philosophers, warriors, and leaders to remain unshaken by doubt. And once you understand this principle, you may begin to see yourself in a completely different way. Not as someone waiting for permission, but as someone capable of shaping their own path. The Stoic secret of inner authority. There is a kind of power that cannot be taken from you. A power that does not depend on status. It does not depend on money. It does not depend on approval. It is quieter than those things, but far stronger. The Stoics called it inner authority. Most people live their entire lives under the influence of external authority. They look outside themselves for signals about who they should be. They measure their worth through approval, through praise, through recognition, through comparison. And when those signals disappear, their confidence disappears with them. But the Stoic philosophers rejected this fragile way of living. They believed something radical for their time. They believed that the most important authority in your life must come from within your own mind. Not from the crowd, not from critics, not from applause, but from the disciplined judgment of your own reasoning. This idea was revolutionary, because if your confidence depends on external validation, then your confidence is always temporary. It can rise today and collapse tomorrow. It becomes something fragile, something unstable. But when your confidence comes from inner authority, something extraordinary happens. Your identity becomes stable, your decisions become clear, and your courage becomes consistent. Imagine two individuals facing criticism. One person immediately begins to question themselves. They wonder if they are wrong. They doubt their abilities. They retreat into silence. But the other person remains calm, not because they believe they are perfect, but because they trust their own judgment enough to evaluate criticism without collapsing under it. That is inner authority. It is not arrogance. It is not stubbornness. It is disciplined self-trust. And the Stoics practiced this discipline daily. Marcus Aurelius wrote reminders to himself almost every night, not because he lacked wisdom, but because he understood something about the human mind. The mind must be trained. Without training, it becomes influenced by fear, comparison, and insecurity. But with discipline, the mind becomes stable, strong, independent. Marcus Aurelius once wrote a simple but powerful idea. Look within. Within is the fountain of good. Think about that for a moment. Within is the fountain, not outside, not in approval, not in praise, not in reputation. Within. This is why the Stoics spent so much time mastering their thoughts. Because they understood that the greatest prison is not external. The greatest prison is mental. If your mind constantly tells you that you are not capable, you will live like someone who is not capable. If your mind constantly tells you that you are inferior, you will behave like someone who is inferior. But if you discipline your mind to recognize your potential, your behavior begins to change. You begin to speak with clarity. You begin to move with purpose. You begin to act with quiet confidence. And this transformation does not require arrogance. It requires honesty, because underestimating yourself is not humility. It is a distortion of truth. The Stoics believed in seeing reality clearly, not exaggerating your weaknesses, not exaggerating your strengths, but understanding your abilities without distortion. And when you see yourself clearly, something powerful happens. You stop apologizing for your potential. You stop hiding your intelligence. You stop shrinking your presence. Instead, you begin to accept responsibility for the strength you possess. And responsibility is the true beginning of power. Because power is not simply the ability to influence the world. Power is the willingness to accept the role you are capable of playing in it. But here is something important. Developing inner authority does not mean you will never feel doubt again. Even the Stoics experienced doubt. The difference is how they responded to it. When doubt appeared, they examined it, they questioned it, they challenged it, they refused to automatically believe every negative thought that entered their mind. And this is a discipline that modern psychology now confirms. Your thoughts are not always accurate reflections of reality. They are often influenced by fear. By past experiences, by social conditioning. But when you develop inner authority, you begin to separate yourself from those automatic reactions. You begin to ask a powerful question. Is this thought actually true? Many times, the answer is no, and once you see that clearly, the thought loses its power over you. This is why the Stoic mindset is so dangerous to limitation. Because once a person masters their own mind, external pressure loses its influence. Criticism becomes information. Failure becomes feedback. Fear becomes a challenge rather than a barrier. And slowly, the person who once underestimated themselves begins to evolve into someone entirely different. Someone calm, someone deliberate, someone capable of walking through life with quiet certainty. Not because they believe they are superior to others, but because they have finally stopped believing they are inferior, and that realization alone can completely transform the direction of your life. But inner authority is only the beginning, because once a person begins to trust themselves, another powerful transformation begins. They start to believe that bigger possibilities may actually be within reach. And that belief is where the next chapter begins. Because in the next part, we will explore the power of radical self-belief. The mindset that separates those who quietly accept limitations from those who reshape the destiny entirely. And once you understand how radical belief works, you may begin to see that the life you imagined was impossible was never truly impossible at all. The power of radical self-belief. Narrator: there is a moment in every powerful life when doubt is replaced by decision. Not loud, not dramatic, just a quiet internal shift. A shift from "can I" to "I will." That shift is radical self-belief. And most people misunderstand what that means. Radical self-belief is not blind optimism. It is not pretending you are invincible. It is not ignoring your weaknesses. It is choosing to believe that your potential is greater than your fear. The Stoics understood this in a profound way. They did not believe in fantasy. They believed in preparation. They believed in discipline. They believed in training the mind to endure difficulty. But beneath all of that discipline was an unshakable belief. I can handle what comes. That belief alone separates powerful individuals from hesitant ones. Because life will always present difficulty. There will always be criticism. There will always be setbacks. There will always be moments when you feel unprepared. But radical self-belief whispers something different. It whispers, even if I am not ready now, I am capable of becoming ready. And that belief creates movement. History repeatedly shows us something fascinating. The people who reshape the world are rarely the most certain, but they are often the most convinced. Convinced that their idea matters. Convinced that their effort matters. Convinced that they matter. When self-belief activates, hesitation weakens. You stop asking for constant reassurance. You stop waiting for perfect conditions. You stop shrinking your ambition to fit the comfort of others. Instead, you expand. You take up mental space. You take responsibility for your potential. Consider the difference between these two internal voices. Voice 1 says, I'm probably not good enough. Voice 2 says, I may not be perfect yet, but I can improve. One voice creates paralysis, the other creates progress, and progress compounds. Small acts of courage begin stacking on top of each other. You speak once. You try once. You risk once. And each time you survive the discomfort, your mind updates its identity. I am someone who can handle this. Confidence is nothing more than evidence collected through action. But here is where radical self-belief becomes powerful. You must sometimes act before the evidence exists. You must sometimes move before you feel qualified. You must sometimes decide before you feel certain. This is the uncomfortable truth most people avoid. Waiting for certainty keeps you stuck. Belief creates certainty through repetition. The Stoics practiced something called premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of adversity. They would imagine worst-case scenarios, not to become anxious, but to realize they could survive them. They mentally rehearsed difficulty, and when the real challenge came, they were not shocked. They were prepared. That preparation built confidence. And that confidence built belief. Radical self-belief is not loud. It does not need to announce itself. It shows itself in behavior, in posture, in tone, in decisions. You begin to walk differently, not arrogantly, but intentionally. You begin to speak differently, not aggressively, but clearly. You begin to choose differently, not impulsively, but boldly. And slowly, the life you once thought was beyond you begins to feel reachable. Because belief changes perception, and perception shapes opportunity. When you believe you are capable, you notice doors you once ignored. When you believe you are worthy, you accept chances you once rejected. When you believe you are strong, you attempt things you once avoided. The world has not changed. You have. And that internal shift changes everything. But here is something even deeper. Radical self-belief challenges identity. Most people are attached to a version of themselves that feels safe. The shy one, the quiet one, the average one, the one who tries but never leads. Identity becomes a cage, because once you define yourself in a limited way, your brain works to maintain consistency. It resists actions that contradict that identity. So when you attempt something bold, discomfort appears. Not because it is wrong, but because it challenges who you thought you were. This is why growth feels unnatural at first. Because you are rewriting identity. And identity does not surrender easily. But if you persist, if you repeatedly act beyond your previous limits, your mind eventually adapts. Your mind eventually adapts. The shy one becomes articulate. The quiet one becomes thoughtful and respected. The hesitant one becomes decisive. And what once felt impossible becomes normal. Radical self-belief is the decision to evolve beyond your previous identity. It is the refusal to let past limitations define future outcomes. And when that belief locks in, life begins to expand. But expansion always comes with a cost. Because the more you believe in yourself, the more responsibility you carry. You can no longer blame circumstances entirely. You can no longer hide behind insecurity. You can no longer pretend you are incapable, because now, you know you are capable. And that realization demands action. Which brings us to the next truth. Belief without action fades, and action without discipline collapses. In the next part, we explore the hidden cost of doubting yourself, the opportunities lost, the time wasted, the invisible consequences that accumulate when you consistently underestimate your own power. And once you see those costs clearly, you may decide that doubting yourself is no longer acceptable.